ESPN's Buster Olney joins the show to talk all things Dodger baseball leading into the MLB trade deadline. That's coming up next on Dodgers Dugout Live.
It's time for Dodger baseball.
Welcome to Dodger Stadium.
Dodgers win!
This is the golden age of Dodger baseball.
Grand slam! It's a double for Freddie.
They're going to make big signings. They're going to make impact trades. This is the most anticipated season in Dodgers history.
Dodgers have won it all in 2020.
Think blue, bleed blue, and I'm out.
What is up, Dodgers Nation? Doug McKain here, credentialed member of Dodgers Media, and welcome to another episode of Dodgers Dugout Live, the #1 Dodgers show on YouTube. If you haven't yet, do us a huge favor and subscribe to the Dodgers Nation YouTube channel, the #1 Dodgers YouTube channel in the game. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, hit that like button, and comment "Go Tawny" down below so you're eligible for our next big giveaway at 95,000 subscribers, giving away a brand new Shohei Ohtani authentic jersey. So definitely comment down below. And today is a special day here at Dodgers Nation. You know him from ESPN Sunday Night Baseball telecast. He's also the host of the ESPN Baseball Tonight podcast, essential listening for all baseball fans out there. The great Buster Olney. Now, Buster, growing up, I loved all the great Dodgers, Mike Piazza, Sean Green, Gary Sheffield. But when I was hitting 212 for JV baseball, I knew that my ticket to the show was not going to be in Major League Baseball. So I idolized guys like you, Mr. Buster Olney. So very special today have you here on Dodgers Dugout Live. Thanks for the time.
Well, thank you for the kind words, Doug. And I would say this, that you and I had a realization at about the same time. I've told you before, I was a huge Dodger fan growing up. He was a huge Laker fan growing up in Vermont. And it was about that age, 14, 15, 16, when I realized at 5'7" 3/4" that I was not going to be the Dodgers second baseman. I was not going to be the Lakers power forward, and I had to find something else to do. So I needed a similar inspiration. Thank you.
Yeah, I literally had a coach tell me once that I'm better at talking about baseball than playing baseball. So once I had that realization, I kind of knew that it was going to be my ticket to the show. But Buster, great to have you on. Busy time. You got the All-Star game coming up, the trade deadline in less than 20 days now. So that's coming around the corner. But we got to start with the current state of the Los Angeles Dodgers. You look at this team. They've gone 22-22 in their last 43 games. They started the year playing 500 ball, had a nice stretch where they went 21-6, but then they were decimated by some key injuries. You lose Mookie Betts, who is heading for his second MVP season. You lose Max Muncy. Yamamoto goes down. Dodgers fans are freaking out. They just got swept by the Phillies, a team that a lot of people expect them to play in the NLCS, but you have a ton of injuries. If you're a Dodgers fan right now, do you look at it and say, okay, it's because of the injuries, or is it run deeper than that? On a scale of 1 to 10, Buster, what should the freak out factor be for Dodgers fans at the moment?
I think about a 5. I would not go full freak out. And you know, let's face it, right now, the Philadelphia Phillies are the best team in baseball, but there is a long way to go in the 19. And I'm going to speak from the perspective of someone who, as once a Dodger fan, in 1988, there was no question through that regular season, the New York Mets were the best team in the National League. They killed the Dodgers that year in the regular season. And yet, you get into the postseason and anything can happen. You look at it big picture, the Dodgers are fine. Like to make the postseason, 98% chance today, according to Fangraphs, to do that. They're 7 games ahead in the National League West. They also have serious problems, right? And they have things that they need to address. Number one, the rotation. We don't know exactly, when different guys are going to come back. I would imagine because the Dodgers, over the last decade and Andrew Friedman's time running the baseball operations, they tend to slow play their injuries with their starting pitchers. They want to crank them up for October. So when I saw Tyler Glasnow go down, I was like, he's getting his midseason break. That's what the Dodgers have often done. So you would expect that he would be back. We'll see what condition Kershaw's in. We don't know how much help they're going to get out of other guys. I do think they're going to be aggressive in the trade market to add a starting pitcher, but are they okay to win the division? Absolutely. Are they okay to make the playoffs? Absolutely. And then we don't know what the state of their pitching staff is going to be. once they get into the postseason. We're still 3 months away from that.
Yeah, absolutely. You look at that 1988 season, the Dodgers lost 10 of 11 games to the Mets. Then they beat them in the NLCS. You just kind of have to throw out the records for the regular season, especially when this is not the team you're going to be facing. But I think when you look at this team, you point at the biggest issue. So many questions with this starting rotation. And we saw in the offseason, it's kind of wild to think about this, Buster. You're a team that goes out there and commits over $1.2 billion in free agency. You would think that maybe you won't have to address a ton of needs at the deadline, but starting pitching is one that they definitely pretty much have to go all in on. I mean, how big do you think the Dodgers are going to go when it comes to starting pitching at the deadline? Do you think they're going to pursue the top names like a Garrett, Crochet, a Scooble if he comes available, or do you think it's more of a number 2 or 3 type starter?
I think it's the best available because there are just not that many, right? There are just not that many that you could actually take a look at. The best guy probably in the marketplace right now is Garrett Crochet of the Chicago White Sox. But as you well know, there's going to be this big question about his innings. You know, coming into this year, the max was in his career was around 50. He's already blown well past that. He's thrown more than twice that many. And so anybody acquiring him would have to be concerned about how he would do down the stretch. I think if you look at the Dodgers' history, they handle pitchers like that well. You know, you could get a Garrett Crochet and tell him, look, we're going to basically give you a month off and then crank you back up. His talent is undeniable. Big, powerful left-hander. He's under team control for 2025. So I think that would be someone who'd be really attractive. But it all depends on how they feel about the question of, is Crochet going to wear down as the season goes along? If you want to go rental, Jack Flaherty, the hometown kid, maybe that would be something the Dodgers would take a look at. We do know he's going to be available. An interesting name to me is Yusei Kikuchi. In recent days, the Toronto Blue Jays have been communicating with other teams. Yep, all of our rentals are going to be available before the trade deadline. They're clearly making decisions. They put Kevin Kiermaier on the waiver wire. Kikuchi is someone who's had a great year, coming off one of the best starts of his career. He's left-handed. If you remember when there were all those the 24 hours when we wondered if Ohtani was going to wind up with the Blue Jays. One of the theories was that he was going to wind up with Kikuchi, and they were going to something about a restaurant. Or I didn't quite follow it, but maybe Kikuchi's going to go to the Dodgers to join Ohtani. Those would be two of the more interesting names to me. Chris Bassett, I think, would be a guy every contender would love, but he's under contract for next year, and the Blue Jays have signaled to other teams they're going to try to win in 2025. I don't think he'll become available. And look, Scooble's fun for all of us to talk about. Maybe the Tigers would look at him and say, look, we need offensive players. We need position players. The Dodgers would be potentially a good match. The Baltimore Orioles, loaded with minor league prospects, position player prospects. Maybe they would be a good match. But I just don't know if the Tigers are serious about winning in 2025, how you could trade a guy who's going to be in the conversation for the American League Cy Young Award.
Yeah, that's the big wild card, is his availability. But just kind of going back to Crochet, I think that's the most fascinating one, because, I mean, you look at impact starters, guys that if they get hot in October, they can carry you. We saw 2014 Mad Bum, 2019 Strasburg. The innings is definitely a little bit of a red flag probably for some teams, but I look at this Dodgers team and I say they gave $325 million to someone who had never thrown a pitch in the show. They traded for and extended Tyler Glasnow, a pitcher that the most starts he's ever made in a season was 21, most innings 120. I don't think this team is that risk averse where they say, okay, Garrett Crochet, when you see the stuff, they would have the top 2 strikeout guys in games 1 and 2 of a series with Glasnow and Crochet. And yes, as you point out, it's definitely, I mean, Tommy John surgery, missed 22, pitched 13 games out of the bullpen in 2023. He only made 12 minor league starts. And before the season, the most innings he had pitched in a season was 62. And that was for Tennessee, which I know that's Vanderbilt's rival. Okay. It's Tennessee right there. But if you had to predict and guess which team ends up with Garrett Crochet, would it be the Dodgers, or do you think it'll be another team?
I think it is, and it's purely a guess at this point. We know that teams are really focused on the draft. I don't think a lot of the trade talk has started in earnest, but we know that Andrew Friedman every year at the trade deadline makes big strikes. I think that they would be the team most likely to do that. You mentioned the word risk. That's what so many of these teams do now, is focus on risk management. Well, if you're the Dodgers and you have all that money, all the resources they have, they are a team that can take more risks than other teams. And I'm betting on the upside, right? That's what they seem to do with the choices of some of their starting pitchers. James Paxton would be an example of that. When he's at his best, right, he's great, but he also has the injury history. But the Dodgers, looking at him, figured, hey, we'll take a shot at that. And I do think there's something to the art of sort of winding down starting pitchers and then getting them cranked up for the postseason. If he were to, say, for example, pitch for the Orioles right now, I would suspect that they would just try to push him through and go through the postseason. Again, if you're the Dodgers, you could get him, for lack of a better way to describe it, give him a few weeks off and then, get him back. The fact that he's on the White Sox and being this dominant to me is a great sign about his mental makeup. My son and I, Jake, we do a fantasy league together, and he wanted Garrett Crochet. And I'm like, dude, guys on bad teams, that is a tough thing to live with, and Garrett Crochet has worked through that. Like, he has a chance to be in the American League Cy Young conversation on the worst team in baseball. That really tells you a lot about his emotional makeup.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you have a fantasy team. I know that you tell your son that your idea to get Wyatt Langford. I listen to the Pod Buster. I need a Buster only bobblehead behind me. But yeah, I think that's a fantastic point, that you have the lead in the division and you also have your eyes on October. You have the depth to say, okay, we are going to get him in a position where he can peak at the right time. And then if you need to use him for multiple innings as a lights out reliever during certain spots in October, that's an option as well. One to follow up on, you say Kikuchi.
I think it was Jake Peavy. Good. That's an important point. I think it was Jake Peavy was the first one I heard mention that possibility. You can get Garrett Crochet. It doesn't mean you have to lock him in as a starting pitcher for October. You can basically say, look, we're looking for this year's version of Andrew Miller for the postseason. And Garrett Crochet could be that guy when you're facing potentially the Phillies with Kyle Schwarber, left-handed hitter, Bryce Harper, left-handed hitter, Bryson Stott, left-handed hitter, Brandon Marsh, left-handed hitter. I mean, he really would be an excellent pickup, whether you used him in the bullpen or in the rotation.
Him and Soto in the World Series. I mean, that would be absolutely electric, moments like that. But you mentioned Yusei Kikuchi, great start against the Giants, 7 1/3, had 13 punch outs. Do you see a world where maybe, with a lot of the questions about this Dodgers rotation, if they're truly all in on winning the World Series this season, and you're saying, you know what, we can't bet on some of these guys just because we don't know how they're going to perform if they return or if they're going to be healthy, could you see them maybe getting a Crochet and then maybe trading for a Kikuchi and then trading someone like a Walker Buehler to another team or one of their current pitchers like a Landon Knack to try to kind of piece out this rotation, just because you would have kind of a logjam in the starting rotation at that point?
Yeah, first off, I think that it'd be really hard to trade Walker Buehler because the potential buying team would not know exactly what they were acquiring. Could I see them acquiring two? Yes, because Andrew, look, since he took over, if you were to do some sort of a ranking on who's been the most aggressive at the trade deadline, who's landed the biggest player, Andrew would, without a doubt, be number one on that list, far and away, in terms of, you know what, we have resources, we're going to use them, we're going to get Manny Machado, we're going to get you Darvish, we're going to get the best guy out there. And the Dodgers, this is part of the benefits of having such a good scouting and development system where even if you make these big trades, with the Nationals and other teams, you're still in a position where you can have enough assets to go out and make trades. And I think, Andrew, it's interesting. The one thing I'd push back on you on this is that I remember saying early in the year, I thought that there were, three teams that were must win the World Series this year. One would be the Yankees, maybe the only year they have Juan Soto. Two would be the Phillies, who were the best team in baseball in the middle of last October and didn't finish off and win the World Series. Number three were the Dodgers. I've mentioned that to some executives, and they have said, no, they're not. They're not absolutely must win the World Series or bust in terms of how they're doing things, because we know this, unlike the Yankees, who we don't know what they're going to be in 2025, we know the Dodgers are going to be great. We know the Dodgers are probably going to be great in 2026 with the makeup of their roster, and Andrew's done a great job of managing the payroll, so I don't think there's that absolute got to have it right now in the way that there is for the Yankees to upgrade the roster before this year's trade deadline.
I think you could absolutely make that case. I think that there's the perception of Dodgers fans, and then there's the reality about how the organization actually operates as far as pushing all the chips in the middle, throwing out the watch, the wife's earrings, lien on the mortgage, that kind of stuff, right? Are you going to do that? Or are you going to say, okay, we want to win, but we don't want to completely sell the farm to do it? You're right with Juan Soto and them trying to extend them. The Dodgers, you have Ohtani for 10 years. You have Mookie locked up. You have Glassdown and Freddie locked up. But we still haven't had a parade here in Los Angeles to celebrate a World Series since 1988. And I always say here, parades over prospects. And this is a hungry, starving fan base for a World Series where we have a parade. But I do think that every single year that the Dodgers go without winning a World Series with Shohei Ohtani, the pressure continues to mount. So my thing is, why not just win it in year one and then just get a little dynasty, have that dam break, and then maybe have a dynasty? But yeah, I do agree. I mean, those three teams with the rosters where they're set up.
Pressure builds. First off, I was, when you were talking about the first time, it would be the first time to have a parade since 1988. I remember it was about 2014. One of the Dodgers looked at me and said, "I'm so sick of Kirk Gibson." But he meant it totally as a compliment. Like before every game, they would run the highlights of that. It's interesting. And you ask yourself this question about the pressure mounting. Like I lived in New York for a lot of years. There is enormous pressure on Brian Cashman right now, their general manager. There's enormous pressure on Aaron Boone. Is there enormous pressure on Andrew Friedman at this moment? No. They don't win the World Series. I don't think he has pressure. However, I do think there's a lot of pressure on Dave Roberts. I do think probably because, as a manager who's not making as much money as Andrew, it's a lot easier to change the manager than any other spot. So I think that that pressure point is on that manager spot for the Dodgers this year.
Yeah, absolutely. There's 700 million reasons why Andrew Friedman has nothing to worry about, and that's the contract stipulation for Shohei Ohtani. Dave Roberts was probably reading that thing 5 or 6 times, hoping to see his name, but he didn't see that in there. So you're absolutely right. It's a lot easier to move off a manager in that kind of contract than all these players that are locked up. But another big question in Dodgerland, Buster, is what the Dodgers are going to do at shortstop when Mookie Betts returns from his fractured left hand. He was heroically playing that position at an average level at the age of 31 for the first time in his career. But Miguel Rojas, he's done a fantastic job. He's been top 5 defensively in essentially every single defensive metric. And also his offense has impressed as well. It's hitting 284, an above average bat. Do you think that when Mookie returns, they keep Rojas at short, or do you think they put Mookie there, or do you maybe go out there, try to trade for a Bo Bichette, put him at short, maybe Rojas at third, but for months he gets back and put Mookie back to second? Just what do you think the Dodgers are going to do at shortstop when Mookie comes back off that injury?
That first off, I think it's TBA in part where I think they have to sort of assess where they are with other parts of the team. I do know this. They were absolutely devoted to the idea of trying to make this work with Mookie. Like, the players invested. I mean, you've been out there at Dodger Stadium before games and watching Mookie do his pregame work with Rojas. It is incredibly impressive. And they want to reward that. But this time away, I think, is going to change the equation. And I did, early in the year when Mookie was making some mistakes, I was watching that play and I'm like, man, in October, that is really hard to play through mistakes. And if they felt like that, his shortstop play was going to be average or below average, that in the end, in a big game, you want Rojas, you want your defender playing shortstop. I don't know if that perspective is going to change. A lot of that probably has to do with who's on the mound, where the strikeouts are, where the ball is going to be put in play. So I'd need more information before giving you a hard answer on that. But I know this, they have just deeply appreciated how Mookie has worked hard at shortstop.
Yeah, the word I've been told when it comes to him playing that position is obsessed. He's been obsessed with being a great shortstop. And that's the kind of player and person that Mookie is. Everything he does it great. I mean, he's been doing an absolute awesome job as an analyst while he's been out. There's nothing that Mookie Betts can't do, but it just makes you wonder if that is the best version of the Dodgers. Now, as far as Bo Bichette, do you think that he's someone that they might explore? Do you think he'll get dealt?
So the information I mentioned, the Blue Jays, the fact Kikuchi's available because his contract expires at the end of this year. The signals coming out of the Blue Jays as of yesterday were that they were only going to talk about rentals to be traded. Now, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Bo Bichette, let's face it, it's been disappointing the last couple of years in what the Blue Jays have been able to accomplish or haven't been able to accomplish. They're still in the window, the back end of it, in which maybe we thought those guys are going to be the core of a Blue Jays championship. I don't think it's the right decision for them to punt, and to defer all this until next year when both those guys will be playing last year their respective contracts. But that may be the reason that's going to happen. I think in part because so much money was spent on the renovation of the Rogers Center that they don't feel like they can tear it down to the studs. I can sit here as a reporter and say, just sell everybody, get a whole bunch of prospects in. But I think they're concerned about getting people into the ballpark after spending so much money on a renovation.
Yeah, and it just kind of feels like those things where it's like the 2016 Cubs. They're going to be the next dynasty. And then in Toronto, you have Bo and Vladdy. Like that core is going to be a dynasty as well. I mean, until it happens, you just never know, especially in this sport. But kind of switching gears to the outfield, that's another area the Dodgers might look to address. And you look at the 6 through 9 hitters for the Dodgers this season. They've combined to hit 216, a 625 OPS. They're at the bottom or in the bottom third at essentially every single offensive category. What is your sense for what the Dodgers might do in the outfield? Do you think they might go after a name like a Randy Arozarena or a Luis Robert Jr. of the White Sox?
Luis Robert, obviously incredibly talented. He also is someone, and he's under contract for a few years. It's been difficult for the White Sox to get him on the field. He's been constantly hurt. I can't imagine a first-year general manager in Chris Getz going through his first deadline where he's going to just scurry this guy out of town without getting exactly what he wants. Do I think that Andrew is going to pay sticker price given the injury history? No, I don't. I would say this. I mean, we've all been watching the bottom of that lineup and talking about how poor it's been. It's gotten a little better. Like it's ticked upward. Outman, since he came back from the minor leagues, he's been better. There's certainly parts of what Pages does that give you hope that he's going to be better. So I think that the production of the guys that they have on their roster right now, they will follow that to some degree. I mean, these are all accomplished major leaguers for the most part that they've been waiting on. I think that's the instinct. But Andrew will monitor the marketplace, and if there's some outfield opportunity that pops up, where adding a guy, I could see them striking. But a lot of it depends on how the veterans are swinging in the days leading up to the deadline. I really believe that in their lineup because I just don't see that as being a big of a priority as the starting pitching, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And we look at that Rays team around 5 games back in the wild card. Randy Arozarena got off to a slow start, but since June 1st, he's really picked things up. Do you think the Rays will be sellers, and how seriously do you think they'll consider moving Arozarena? Do you think that if it's not the Dodgers, it's another team, or it just kind of depends on how these next couple of weeks go?
Yeah, the Rays, even when they're at their best, they're always managing payroll, right? And we know that the Dodgers and the Rays can make trades. They speak the same language. Through the years, that has been the case. I do think that if someone comes in and wants to get a Arozarena and is willing to pay the Rays price, that they will move him because that's what they do. They turn over their roster. They always try to stay one step ahead of their payroll challenges. They've generally speaking they've been a successful team in terms of being competitive every year. That has been the most important thing. But it's led to the trades of a Tyler Glasnow and other accomplished players on their team. So I do think that they will listen to other teams that will talk about Randy.
Yeah, and by the sounds of it and kind of what you said earlier, it doesn't feel like the Dodgers are necessarily going to be at a 10 when it comes to how aggressive and how all in they are going to be at the deadline. We still haven't seen Andrew Friedman pull off a mega blockbuster trade since they've expanded the postseason. I always say when it comes to Andrew Friedman, he likes to buy the Halloween candy the day after Halloween when he can get it at a little bit of a discount and doesn't want to overpay. Do you think he'll overpay on a scale of 1 to 10? Just how aggressive do you think they're going to be? Just kind of what's your sense at the end of the day for what they'll do and how they'll approach the deadline?
So I'll answer the question by asking you a question. Let's list the times when Andrew Friedman has overpaid to get a player. Okay? Let's just come up with that in terms. Yamamoto, I think we can all agree. Yeah. Like they paid absolutely top dollar for that. Ohtani, not even close, given the deferrals in that deal. The Guggenheim Group is going to make more money with the money that's not paid to Ohtani over the next 10 years than they'll have to pay him. That's it. They got Freddie Freeman after the Braves dropped out. Their main the only competitor in that bidding were the Tampa Bay Rays. They got Mookie Betts to take a lot of deferred money, didn't give up much in the trade. I think your casting of Andrew is exactly right. He does not believe in paying sticker price. And if you get into these situations where you have to pay sticker price plus 10%, and you have a 7-game lead in your division, right? And you have a 98% chance of making the playoffs in mid-July, I just don't think there's a reason where he's going to step out and go nuts and say, yeah, we're going to tear up the farm system the way that, for example, the Cleveland Indians did when they traded for Andrew Miller in 2016, or the Cubs when they traded for Aroldis Chapman. I don't think Andrew has to operate that way.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct. I mean, he's not batting 1,000, but he's definitely in Ted Williams territory as far as the moves that he makes. We call him Andrew Fleeceman for a reason, but I also think that the ownership of the Dodgers has made it very clear to this organization that there's a sense of urgency now with Mookie Betts' prime, Freddie Freeman's prime. You went out there and you signed Shohei Ohtani. I do think we might see a little bit of a different, at least I'm hoping for, as far as just someone who desperately wants to see this team win a World Series this season. But I would not be shocked too that with the prices that other teams are going to be willing to pay to get over the top, that maybe they kind of back out. And as you point out so precisely, this team does their best work when guys fall into their laps. Freddie Freeman and names like that, and they take it full advantage. So definitely think that could be a possibility. And the big question,
to your point, if I could just jump in, to your point, you think of a guy like Garrett Crochet, right? This is someone with incredible talent, and I do think he potentially is a difference maker. And I could see the Dodgers making a deal for him. If at any point the Baltimore Orioles decide that's got to be the guy, like that, we want Garrett Crochet, and there's a bidding war for Crochet, and the Orioles are serious about it with that deep farm system, I think they'll get him. I think Baltimore will get him. And I think Andrew is not going to go nutty to necessarily to get any player. I haven't seen a player in the marketplace where I could see Andrew saying, yeah, we'll pay retail plus 10%.
Yeah, I think Garrett Crochet is that one impact guy. Hope to see him on the Dodgers. The Orioles, though, they're the team that scares me. I'm afraid of seeing a tweet from you or Jeff Passan or one of these guys that says Garrett Crochet to the Orioles, because you could be facing Garrett Crochet in the World Series, right? We could have a repeat of the 66 World Series, and you have to face Garrett Crochet. So that's the last thing I want to see. I want to see him in Dodger blue. I think Friedman's going to be aggressive, but I think he's also going to be smart and sensible and opportunistic. Okay, so we're going to end the show on this. I have a rapid round, Mr. Buster only. I'm calling it boom or buster. Okay. If you agree with this, you say boom. If not, you can say bust. Okay. So let's get it going. Yep. Shohei Ohtani will be batting leadoff when Mookie Betts returns from injury.
Boom.
Ooh. Okay. Shohei Ohtani, who even as the primary DH is leading the National League in WAR, will win the MVP and become the first exclusive DH to win the award.
Boom.
Double boom. Okay. Pulling a pitcher from a no-hitter in the 7th.
And this one, I think it's boom. I think he was at 99 pitches.
Yeah.
Paul Skeens was at 99 pitches. The most pitches he'd thrown in any game this year were 107. There was no chance he was going to finish that game. And so knowing that, you get him out in the seventh inning, especially given how important he is.
Would you agree with me on this take, though? I think case by case. For example, a couple years ago, Clayton Kershaw has the perfect game going to Minnesota. He's already won 3 Cy Youngs and MVP in a World Series. If he wins that game and throws a perfect game, I think his legacy goes up a notch, and I think that would have been more impactful than winning a World Series as a number 3 or 4 starter. I think, don't you think in that situation, considering where he's at in his career, you go batter for batter at least?
I would say this, and I can't remember exactly what the conversation was at that time, but if I were Dave Roberts in that shoes, I'd go, I'd go, Clayton, what do you want to do? It's up to you. Your body, you're in your mid-30s, you're essentially, all the injury risk is yours. It's different with Paul Skeens. I think the age makes a huge difference in that one. And if I'd been in Dave's shoes, I would have said, Clayton, whatever you want to do, that's what we're going to do.
And plus, he's starting the All-Star game, so Paul Skeens just absolutely electric yesterday. Okay, next one. Dave Roberts will be the Dodgers manager next year, no matter how the Dodgers season ends.
Oh, boy. I'm going to go bust on that one because I think that if they were to have an early exit first round, and I don't even – it's so funny because I think Dave does a great job. He wouldn't have a problem getting another job if the Dodgers were to let him go. But it's what you and I discussed, the pressure points. And I do know that with ownerships, they're looking for somebody to blame at times. You know, there'll be somebody up there who will say, this is not acceptable. And Andrew, they're not going to turn over the roster. They're not going to change Andrew. They're not going to change his staff. Who's the easiest person to change? Dave. That's why if I had to guess, I think that an early exit could mean change.
It's a tough job. He gets all the blame when they lose. He gets none of the credit when they win. And it's a tough spot to be in, but I think he realized that. I think he knows what's at stake. Okay, next one.
He's a smart guy.
Yeah.
He gets it.
Absolutely. 100%. Okay, next one. The Dodgers will face the Phillies in the NLCS.
Oh, man. You know what? I'm going to go boom on that as we sit here today. I will tell you that before the season started, I mean, last year I picked the Padres to win the World Series, so I'm obviously a total idiot. This year I picked the Phillies to win the World Series. And right now, at this point, I would not deviate from that pick. They are an awesome team.
Baseball needs that matchup. It would be so great to see those two teams face off. Okay, going to go a little on a different angle on this one because I always want to get your take on this one. Fernando Valenzuela gets inducted into the Hall of Fame one day. Now, he could be inducted with the different committees, the baseball player era committees, the Buck O'Neil type awards. I mean, do you think one day we look at his impact on the game that he could get into Cooperstown at some point?
Yes, because I think the standards for pitchers are going to change inevitably because, you know, the days of starting pitchers throwing 250, 300 innings are over. People will go back and look at Fernando's record through a different context and ask the question, not only Fernando, but guys like Tommy John, and say, how could this person not be in the Hall of Fame? I mean, for years, and the Dodgers, you know, under Tommy Lasorda, were a team that every year they would roll out a rotation that was dominant, and those guys would take the ball and they would throw a ton of innings. And Fernando was right at the top of that list from the time he moved into the rotation, 1981, through his rest of the time with the Dodgers.
Yeah, I think the most mind-blowing thing about Fernando, from 81 to 86, went 97 and 68, had 84 complete games and 26 shutouts in that stretch. I mean, that's insane. An under 3 ERA, still the only player to win the NL Rookie of the Year, the Cy Young, and the World Series in the same season. Then you add the cultural impact. I totally agree with you on that one. Okay, last one here for Boomer Bust. The Dodgers will win 2 or more World Series titles in the next 10 seasons with Shohei Ohtani.
Boom. They will, because every year they're giving themselves a chance. I mean, you think of it like, like a poker game. In the end, it'll work out that they'll put themselves in position because they've done such a great job of drafting, developing. They also have the financial wherewithal to go and spend big money, as they did with Yamamoto, as they did with Ohtani, and where they probably will with Sasaki this winter.
Absolutely. And just a little quick follow-up on that one. When you look at this era of Dodger baseball, do you think that if they win one World Series, it would be considered a success, or do they have to win multiple World Series to consider it a success?
Well, I think it's going to be success either way because of all the fans that they draw and all the games that they win. But I do think there are various categories. Like, would we think of the Dodgers being a dynasty if they don't win World Series? No. They'll be closer to being what the Atlanta Braves were from 1991 to like 2007 when they made the playoffs, like 15 straight years in that window. And that's a hard place to be because you have conversations with former Braves players about what went wrong. How was it that you guys wound up with 3 Cy Young pitchers on that team, plus Chipper Jones, plus Andrew Jones, and you won 1 World Series? The Dodgers don't want to be left having those answering those questions for themselves. And and I know, I personally don't give any demerits for the 2020 championship and the pandemic season.
Yeah, absolutely.
But a lot of baseball fans will.
Yeah.
And that's a reality. And there's always going to be a core of fans who are going to say, well, you haven't won a World Series in 162 game season.
And I think that's what irks some Dodgers fans, is having to hear that from other fan bases. So at this point, it's like, let's win so we can just shut those fans up, those fans that are attacking us. So yeah, for me, I just want one parade, and this Dodger fan can die a happy man, and it'll be fantastic. But I will also take a dynasty like you're predicting here on Dodgers Dugout Live. But Buster Olney, we thank you so much joining us here. Busiest guy in baseball, ahead of the All-Star game, got the trade deadline. We really don't need to plug your socials because you already have over 1 million followers, but you can follow him over on the X and Instagram. Buster, thank you so much. We appreciate the time, and enjoy the All-Star game, my man.
Doug, always fun to talk with you. I'd love to hear your passion.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, and I love the Sandy Koufax picture in the back, too, for those who don't know the Koufax silhouette. But thanks, Buster, and have a great rest of your day, my man.
Okay, you too. Take care.
Take it easy. But that was Buster Olney. There he goes. Buster Olney of ESPN. You know him, you love him. One of the best baseball minds, baseball insiders in the sport, joining us here on Dodgers Dugout Live. I think Buster had some really interesting takes on all things Dodger baseball. And I think the one before, we've talked trade deadline pretty much every single day for the last 5 years on this show. So one we really haven't talked about a lot, though, is just the general idea of Dave Roberts being on the hot seat. And I want to go over to my guy, Mr. Tony Taters, and Mr. Noah here. What'd you think of that? Because I tend to agree with him. If they get bounced early, as insane as it is to say, I think Dave Roberts, at the very least, is on the hot seat where the following season he could be replaced. But I think depending on how it goes, depending on who they trade for, if they get guys back healthy, they might, if they're going to make a change, it would be at manager.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. Obviously, like what both of you said, it's not going to be Andrew Friedman. You know, he's in that clause. So you go to the next level. It has to be Dave Roberts. Now, like Buster Olney, I'm a little scared to say, he's for sure gone if they lose, and he's for sure back if they, no matter what happens. But I don't know. I am in the boat where it's hard for me to imagine Dave not being the manager in 2025. I think a really bad first round exit, if the team is fully healthy, maybe pushes, ownership or, the management to do something. But it's just so hard for me to imagine Dave Roberts not being this team's manager. I mean, the players just love him so much. The
organization knows that 100% of the wins and losses aren't all on Dave Roberts. Sure. They know it's a collaborative effort. You got scouts, you have analytics, you have all these guys involved in making these decisions. But I also think from an optics standpoint and a perception standpoint, he would be the guy that the fans would point at if they get swept, or if he pulls the ball from a Rich Hill in a game 2 of the World Series and they lose that game. So I think that it's complicated in the sense that you could directly point at a reason why they lost. But that's why I think it's so fascinating, because the stakes are as high for Dave Roberts as a manager than I think any manager or coach in professional sports.
Well, I think Dave knew that the second Shohei Ohtani signed that 10-year, $700 million deal. I mean, the second that happens, Dave Roberts knows it's win or potentially my job on the line at this point.
Totally. And the stakes are too, if he wins with Ohtani, he's going nowhere. Might as well add him to that contract.
Yeah, literally.
Right? Let's put him in there now, because if he wins a World Series the next 1, 2, or 3 years, that's already 2 World Series titles. Should have been 3 if you look at 2017. Not only does he have his job for the rest of his life, he's basically the Supreme Court judge, right? Yeah. He stays there as long as he wants. He's going to Cooperstown.
I was going to say.
He's going to be a Hall of Fame manager. So
he's on track already.
Those stakes are extremely, extremely high. But I know I'm going to get the bring back Mike Scioscia, make Justin Turner the manager.
Oh, God.
I've seen Dave Roberts in action, and I think his biggest skill is kind of your epic Johan Ramirez tweet with the hug.
That was a good moment.
He really does not just give guys compliments when they're playing well. He really has a way to just instill confidence in guys when they're at their lowest points. We saw Max Muncy a couple years ago. Johan Ramirez is the latest example, and his communication level is authentic to players. I think that you could see Dave Roberts and see his style and his approach, and some players, if they didn't think it was authentic, they would say, oh, this is cringe, or this is, but no, that's who Dave Roberts is, and it's authentic, and it actually translates. But yeah, the truth of the matter is, doesn't matter how great of a culture guy he is, if they're going to make a move, it's probably going to be there. But here we got, we got something else you want to add?
I was going to say really quickly, I think to that point, what's really interesting is I think when the Dodgers kind of get that credit for always, being the team that revitalizes careers, things like that, you always think to Andrew Friedman, you think to the scouts, all things like that. Dave Roberts never gets that credit, but I think he deserves a lot of that credit just for being that manager like you're talking about that really knows how to instill confidence in his players.
Totally agree. But having said all that, you better win, Dave. you have better win. It's now or never. It really is, because sometimes you have to just make a change for the sake of making a change. Bill Parcells talked about in the NFL, at some point you just need a new voice if it's not working. Yeah. And if this team's healthy and they don't win, yeah, we got I like this from Mr. Marty Mart. Less hugs, more rings. It's fire take. Fire take. We got a great job, G-Mac. Hey, Buster is great, man. Thanks, Angel.
Awesome.
Buster's the man.
That was really awesome.
I love Buster only. I really am I know I like a kid a lot. I really did idolize Buster back in the day. Like, I knew that I had no chance. All my friends were like, I'm going to be the Lakers center. I'm like, dude, in Little League, I knew I was going to do nothing athletically. And I'm okay.
Hey,
but
you took those good swings on the Dodger Stadium field.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm okay, but I mean, I knew the statistics at the time. You know what I mean? As far as these guys are miracles to make it to the show. But yeah, Buster's the man. I think that he really made some pretty bold takes as far as, I mean, he thinks that if he had a bet on a team, it'd be the Dodgers for Garrett Crochet. And I think a lot of Dodgers fans want to hear that. I like that the Colossal Jaguar says the Dodgers need a group hug right now. Yeah, you lose 3 straight. You lose 8 of your last 12. But how about you, Mr. Tony Taters? What are your thoughts on Dave Roberts and being on the hot seat?
I mean,
what would it take?
Dude, the past, how long has he been a Dodgers manager now? 10, 13 years?
Since 2016.
Since 2016, dude. Every year, it's just such a, even 2020, that was a good year for sure, obviously. But it was, I will admit, being half the season, I was still kind of like, oh, I wish it was a full season. But I love that championship no matter what. But dude, every year, especially the last 3 years, it's just so heartbreaking. And sometimes he makes those questionable calls, you know, different lineups, different pitching strategies than the postseason. You do this whole thing throughout the year. You're winning 100+ games. You get to the postseason, you switch things up, and so far it's not working out. So, I mean, definitely got to say he's in the hot seat for sure.
It's just the standard so high. By the way, Isaiah says, what are you talking about, D-Mac? You signed a $140 million contract saying Will Smith. I love that's a good comment of the show. But, I mean, I do think that last thought on Dave Roberts before we move on is you can't have it both ways. You can't be the fan that says, if the Dodgers didn't go against the cheating Astros, they would have won the 2017 World Series, and Dave Roberts can't win a World Series, right? I mean, there's a little bit of a hypocrisy there when it comes to that, and it's not his fault you had a pandemic. I mean, the 2020 Dodgers team could have won in a full regular season as well, but hey, that we're just laying out all the facts, and perception does mean a lot in sports. Perception means a lot. Lakers fans bullied Jeannie in the organization to fire Darvin Ham. They literally bullied her to do that, right? I'm not saying Dodgers fans or Lakers fans, but they know, they can feel it. But I look, let's just hope that he wins this year and he's got that job. But DuckTales said, I'd fire Dave Roberts and GL, not gonna lie. Mike Sedana says, I'd take Isak Paredes at third base. Yeah, we talked about him earlier. Dino's 5150, who is on the IL right now that should be available come NLDS if all goes well. I mean, do we have enough time for that? Because tons of guys, obviously. You got Mookie Betts coming back, Matt Muncy coming back. You have Walker Buehler set to return. How will he look? I mean, he took one off the hip. Yamamoto, Tyler Glasnow. I think Glasnow, of course, is the lock, and this was just a little bit of a rest and a way to reset and get right, because Glasnow's ERA has gone up every single month since the start of the season, and they've seen him wear down just a little bit as far as his overall effectiveness. Yamamoto's the $1 million question for me. Not that he does come back, but when he does, can he stay back and be as effective as he was after his first start of his career against the Padres in Seoul, South Korea? And then, look, I mean, Jason Hayward's another guy that could have an impact on this team, but I just hope that this Dodgers team right now isn't in a spot where they're letting this last 2 weeks determine what they're going to do. I'm hoping that they already saw the need for starting pitching, saw the need for an outfielder, saw the need for a potential shortstop before any of this, knowing that it's high stakes poker when you're going up against the Phillies. Because imagine going up against that Phillies where you didn't even face Suarez and you got Nola and Wheeler in a 7-game series where they have home field advantage. That scares the heck out of me. That wasn't Bryce Harper that we're going to see in the postseason, right? I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, Noah, I mean, I was shaking in my boots looking at that Phillies team.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing with that series. Yeah, you can make the excuses the Dodgers didn't have their full team. You're going to have Mookie at the top, Muncy back. You know, the pitching's going to look much different. But no matter what the Dodgers have, that Phillies team is as good as it is. And like you said, Harper's going to even be better. I mean, Schwarber had just come off the IL and was just hitting leadoff home runs left and right. I mean, that team is so good. They have the chemistry, they have the lineup, they have a top 4 bullpen, they have the best starting rotation. I mean, that team is built for October. So no matter who the Dodgers have in the lineup, it's not like the Phillies aren't going to have those guys. So it has to be scary. And the Phillies are probably going to add at the deadline. They need potentially an outfielder. So they could go out and get one of the top. They have a great farm system. Like, this team is scary.
And that's a part of my Randy Arozarena angle too. Is if they don't trade for Randy Arozarena, I could see the Phillies trading for Randy Arozarena because Luis Robert Jr. I mean, the thing about both these teams too is Randy's been batting 2nd or 3rd for the Rays. For the Dodgers and Phillies, he's batting 6th or 7th, and he doesn't have that pressure, and he's going out there and showing the top of the lineup that he is a top of the lineup guy. So I think it's a major X factor. I truly believe that. But that Phillies team, they definitely were impressive against a depleted Dodgers team that had defensive issues. Miguel Vargas, you had Teoscar Hernandez running the Dodgers out of an inning. Ned Colletti used to talk about presentation, and I don't care who's not in the lineup, who's on the IL, whoever is wearing the interlocking LA on their hat or Los Angeles or Dodgers on their uniform has to go out there and be held to a certain standard. And I think it was sloppy. I don't think they were at their best. Yes, it was extremely humid. It's always humid in Philadelphia, the new spinoff show, but they just did not get it done. But we got 11 Orphan, $5 super chat. What do you think about Walker Buehler training in Florida? Do you think he doesn't trust the Dodgers training staff, or is it nothing? I would say that, I mean, it's closer to where he's from, and that's probably the bigger thing there would be my guess. And Walker Buehler, having talked to him, you'll ask him a question about baseball, and it'll go to some deeper level that you didn't know existed. And point is, Buehler is as smart of a pitcher in a baseball mind as anyone in the sport. So if he thinks that being in Florida in training is the best for him to get back to where he thinks he needs to be to help this team, then I'm all for it. I don't think that's a slight against the Dodgers. Every time I ask Walker Buehler a question about the organization, he uses the word we, and he actually plays for the team, not me, right? Yeah, he says the word we because of how much he loves his organization. I asked about Shohei Ohtani. He says, we made him the highest paid player ever. He's got a lot of pride about being a Dodger, and he sees his numbers. He knows he wasn't effective. If he was pitching well, the Dodgers would go for him, and he just understands what's at stake. So I don't think there's anything about that. Having said that, I don't think they would trade Walker Buehler, but there's more than a 0% chance just with the way this team is set up if they don't think it's going to be effective. The good thing is the velocity is still there. It's just about finding the mechanics, and I think also adjusting to just more weight. He's heavier than he was. Dave has mentioned this, his body composition, where it's at. It's just different. I think that he has to smooth some things out. But Will Lazar, don't bet against Buehler, though. We'll say that. Will Lazar, $5. Doug, call your shot. What are the Dodgers going to do at the deadline? That's pretty bold right there. It's pretty bold. I said it a couple of days ago. I think they're going to get Garrett Crochet. I think that, and the reason I say that, it's not just because he's the biggest name on the market. The reason I say that is because the other guys that are available, if the pitchers that you expect to return are healthy, none of them start over those guys, right? If you trade for Jack Flaherty, he doesn't start over Yamamoto. He doesn't start over even a really healthy Gavin Stone potentially, or at least you have the conversation. Garrett Crochet and Skubal, who all the insiders I've talked to, it just doesn't feel like the Tigers are seriously going to deal Skubal. But Garrett Crochet is that one guy where if you trade for him and he's healthy, he's a lock to get the ball in game 2. Glasnow's a lock for game 1, but Crochet would be a lock for game 2. The rest of the other guys are pieces, number 2 to 3 to 4 level starters. I think Kikuchi, his upside is really, really impressive, and it's ahead of a Nathan Eovaldi in my eyes, even though Eovaldi's a vet. But I think Garrett Crochet is the name worth trading for, knowing you're going to have to give up top prospects. I mean, think about it. Are the Whites, ask the questions. Is it a natural trade partner that's a seller? Answer is yes. The White Sox have done tons of deals with the Dodgers. You don't want to limit that pipeline if you're Chicago. I think that Josue DePaula is a name that they could sell high on to keep some starting pitching. 2, is he a rental? No. He's under 2 more years of team control after this season, and he's a power lefty. 3, is he a swing and miss strikeout guy? Yes. The Dodgers knew they needed that this offseason. They went out and got the best in the game in Tyler Glasnow. So I think that's top of mind for the Dodgers, getting the big strikeout guy. I think they're going to go out there, get Garrett Crochet. I'm not guaranteeing a Randy Arozarena, but I think Randy Arozarena makes a lot of sense because you need an outfielder next year with Teoscar Hernandez potentially signing elsewhere. And it just makes you wonder, do you really think a team as all in as the Dodgers that have so much veteran talent is going to trust this many rookies in the outfield and such prominent roles? I mean, Miguel Vargas, that play he made, if that's in the NLCS, I mean, I love Miggy Varg, right? I think Randy Arozarena is the guy. And I also think that Pete Fairbanks, if he's available, is a guy. But the one I'm just confident in saying is Garrett Crochet. Doesn't happen, fine. Could be the Orioles. But I do think that if they're going to go big, I think that's the name to go. Jonathan Morin, what up, D-Mac? Best Dodgers show in the biz. Appreciate you for that one, my man. Give you a walk-off shot for that one. Bilal K, D-Mac, will like this. Just one comment from me today. The best realistic acquisitions we can get to save this season are Nimmo, Crochet, Robert Jr., Kikuchi, and Paredes. I like how you name like 2 of the top 5 guys as realistic acquisitions, because the truth of the matter is, I think with Luis Robert Jr., the prospect capital cost is going to be high. And do they think that he's going to have an impact this season? I think they do, because he's performed better of late. But you do have Pages and Outman who can play center for you, or Jason Hayward. So at the very least, defensively, you feel good with Jason Hayward there. But I think Randy Arozarena is a name that they're interested in. Just a matter of, are the Rays going to be sellers? And I think they should be, even though they're 5 games back in the wild card. But Kikuchi is another name I want to see. I would be happy. This would be my dream deadline. Trade for Crochet, Kikuchi, Randy Arozarena, and Tanner Scott. Those 4 names, you get that done. I think you won the deadline in a major, major way. We got Richard Flores, $4.99 super chat. We need players with guts, grinders, Mickey Hatcher and Kirk Gibson. Yeah, we talked about 88, Mickey Hatcher, big home run in that series, the World Series. Kirk Gibson type. Sorry, Kike, Lux, Outman, and Biggio are stiffs. We need the right players. And I think they have a lot of the right players. And it's funny that you mentioned Kike, because all of a sudden the postseason rolls around and he wakes up and he's the right player that day. So you just never know who's going to be hot in October. But I agree. We got 818 say, D-Mac, your interview skills are hawk tooey. Oh, come on now. I can't believe I just read that. Going to give myself BT Fouts. Bassett would be a good add too. BT Fouts, I agree. Bassett's another one of those secondary guys. I like the way the Kikuchi stuff plays up though. 97 mile per hour heater. We got Rayso D-Mac no longer gets starstruck. What are you? Who do I get okay, I'll be honest. I don't get starstruck by Kirsch, but he is the one guy who I still kind of have a little fanboy vibe around, because just being a fan of his growing up. But yeah, what player would get you starstruck, Noah? Could be any player in any sport. Any player in any sport.
Starstruck? I feel like I'd be starstruck being in front of LeBron.
Really?
He's such a big presence.
Yeah, he's big.
I mean, he's just so big. He's so it's LeBron,
Yeah.
I feel like that. I mean, obviously rest in peace, but Kobe for sure would. I mean, I've met Kobe before and I was starstruck in front of Kobe. I mean, that was like the most.
The Hoopers are very, I think for me, Sandy Koufax, very starstruck when I was at his statue thing. Just, I mean, it almost feels like he's not real. Like you want to go and poke him in the face to make sure he's actually real.
Pinch him maybe,
exactly. Pinch him a little bit. Michael Jordan for me. Absolutely.
Because it's Michael Jordan,
it's Michael Jordan.
Those people.
He's another guy who doesn't feel like real. Willie Mays, who passed away, would probably be one as well. But
Shohei
Ohtani.
I will say at FanFest, like when we were, in the dugout doing the interviews and stuff, when Shohei walked out for the interview, like I genuinely felt like the air shift at Dodger Stadium. It genuinely felt like
that's like
God was walking out.
So I try. You guys know I try to stay hip to the buzzwords of the next gen.
Aura, is that what you're gonna say?
That's the first time where I understood the definition of aura.
I agree.
When he turned that corner,
it was insane.
It was like he was in slow mo, and every now and then he kind of flipped his hair back.
It genuinely felt like
that's not a baseball player. That's a international superstar, rock star, Michael Jackson.
That's what it was.
Absolutely,
it was crazy. Like I genuinely kind of felt like, whoa, like someone who's not human is walking into this interview right now.
I agree with that. I totally agree with that. We got Mike Saldana. Buster gained 500K followers by stopping by. I think he's okay at over 1 million, but someone said Tiger Woods, Magic Johnson and Magic. He's someone that for sure. I think, yeah. I mean, Vince Scully too, back in the day.
That's a good one.
Last couple years of Vin Scully. I never got to meet Vin Scully, so that one. Ken Griffey Jr. You know what's funny? I interviewed Ken Griffey Jr. at the Soul series, and I was definitely like, I even told him, I was like, bro, you're literally every favorite player's favorite player. So yeah, for sure, we can spend a whole.
You even said to me, you're like, I usually don't like feel anything in interviews. Like that one was one of the coolest things I've ever done.
No, 100%, man, 100% for sure, bro. Absolutely, Ken Griffey Jr. Man, I like that new commercial he did with Travis Scott, which is really sick too. But that's you, Mr. Tony Tears, where we had our little walk off shot. Who's the did you? I mean, I kind of know this because I saw it in real life, but I mean, you were pretty starstruck when you saw Kurtz coming out of that dugout. I mean, you were an adult man skipping on a baseball field, and this is not a joke.
Dude, come on, man. You already know it's Clayton Kershaw for one, but other than Kershaw, and it still is going to be Kershaw the next time I see it, I'm going to try to play it a little more chill. But come on, man. I just can't help it. You know how it is. But other than Kershaw, I would have to say Lionel Messi. He's my dad's favorite player right now, and I would love to meet him with my dad. I think that would be the more sweet, but other than that, definitely LeBron James, freaking Derrick Rose for me. I really liked him in the 2010s.
What was prime Derrick Rose like?
Dude, he was awesome. It was a good time. But
no, absolutely. But here we go. A couple walk-off shots here, guys. We got Jay Block and Starstruck. I met you, D-Mac. Hey, man, one of these days, right? We got Adam 818. I was starstruck when I met Sean Green in 2000. Colombia going to beat Messi from Nando. We got Luis Gonzalez, ma'am, to be employee, the Dodgers, or Sheesh. D-Mac, Raul Mondesi for GM. That's a bro. But that's going to be for this episode of Dodgers Dugout Live. My name is Doug McKain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMac_LA. For Mr. Noah Cameras, Tony Taters, Antonio. If you haven't yet, by the way, subscribe to the channel, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, hit the like button. And remember, nothing brings together quite like Dodger baseball. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMac_LA. And until next time, think blue, bleed blue, and I'm out.